To talk about what's at stake in these meetings is Sung-Yoon Lee. He's the Kim Koo-Korea Foundation Professor in Korean Studies and also Assistant Professor at the Fletcher School of Law and Diplomacy at Tufts University. Professor Lee, what do you think are the chances of the Kim-Trump summit in Singapore taking place on June the 12th?
Well, the date may be pushed back, who knows, but I think it's more likely than not that the summit will take place. Why? Because there are certain political gains to be made by both sides. For President Trump, he can argue that he has tamed the North Korean leader, that he has de-escalated and laid the foundation for peace and denuclearization, although even if that were to happen, it would take years. For the North Korean leader, he could say that he has now engaged the United States, persuaded the U.S. to provide some sanctions relief, perhaps some economic aid, and tone down its threatening rhetoric. So, there are political victories for both sides, and I think it's going to happen.
Sure, but we saw some disruptions in the past week. A senior White House official in a background briefing that I attended said that the reason President Trump wrote Kim Jong-un that letter about canceling the meeting was because the U.S. side was stood up by North Korea. The U.S. side waited them in Singapore for 3 days, allegedly, and the DPRK never showed up. And when they did show up, they caught U.S. Vice President Mike Pence a political dummy, quote unquote. So this claim, of course, has not been substantiated by North Korea, but would that be plausible that what the White House explained was true? And if so, why would the North Koreans do that?
Because we've seen North Korea do this in the past, play that game of hard to get, agree to meetings, then not show up, walk right out of negotiations, meetings in the middle of those meetings, not show up for scheduled meetings. Playing hard to get is very much in the North Korean playbook, and I think they pushed the Trump administration a bit too far. The name calling we've seen before, Little Rocket Man on a suicide mission, mentally deranged daughter, and so on. And with previous administrations too, North Korea is called Obama a wicked black monkey. So it's nothing new, although the Trump administration, I'm sure, was fed up with it. But I think that sudden snub of Kim Jong-un in that discourteous letter, we've seen a little bit of leverage gained by the U.S., now getting the North to chase the United States. But it was a very short-lived leverage because 24 hours later, President Trump apparently decided to meet Kim Jong-un.
Sure, but let's talk about what North Koreans want. We heard so much about what U.S. has wanted and demanded. What exactly do you think North Korea want at this point, besides the guarantee of regime safety?
Well, regime safety, security guarantee, these have been made by previous U.S. administrations, but they are simply words, statements on a piece of paper, so they're not entirely convincing. At the same time, what Kim seeks is to be recognized in the end as a de facto nuclear power and to engage the United States in protracted negotiations on arms control as an equal nuclear power. That is for now unacceptable to the United States. But there are many hurdles along the way. No nuclear weapons possessing state has ever bargained them away through conventional nuclear diplomacy without a change in the regime, in the leadership. South Africa, Kazakhstan, Ukraine, Belarus all underwent a fundamental different political change. North Korea is the same dynasty we know over the past 7 decades. So it's exceedingly unlikely that North Korea will give it up completely. But in the meantime, in engaging the United States, North Korea has some gains, real substantive gains like sanctions relief to be had.
Finally, what do you think might come out of a Donald Trump-Kim Jong-un summit should they take place in June or any time after that?
I see a persisting tendency on the part of the United States, especially President Trump, to underestimate the North Korean leaders. We've seen this going back all the way to the 70s. When Americans meet with Kim Jong-il or Kim Jong-un or even the grandfather Kim Il-sung, they uniformly come away impressed that the North Korean dictator is not only not crazy, but very reasonable, has a sense of humor, makes self-effacing comments and so on, and they begin to trust the North Korean leader, even believing that by virtue of their own charisma and empathy that they've emotionally connected with the North Koreans. So I think there'll be bonhomie, nice handshakes, perhaps even an embrace, who knows. But I think in terms of the substantive issues, probably not much will have changed, even in the wake of the face-to-face meeting.
Professor Sung-Yoon Lee from Fletcher School, thanks so much for your insight.